Hi, I'm Seamless, and this is the making of Modulators of the Universe, Part 1, Arrangement and Elements, where we go over, identify each individual thing, what it is, and then talk about how it was all written and that kind of stuff. I want to point out that if you want, you can actually purchase this FLP for yourself and look at the project and get your little grubby fingers on it by going to the Fix Store, fixtstore.com/SeamlessR, and picking up the deluxe version of the track. You can get individual ones, you don't have to get the whole thing, but if you do get the whole Wizard Base EP, you do get a discount. Anyway, this is actually a track from scratch also, so if you want to go look at the actual making of, which is to say watch me make it from scratch, it took me kind of a while. I forget what number it was. Let me check real quick. That was track from scratch 11. Yeah, so go check out track from scratch 11 in my channel, and you can watch the beginning from beginning to end, the creation of this track. Although you can kind of consider the making of videos is about to happen in kind of a Cliff Notes version. So this track came about because I noticed over the years people on YouTube would make every once in a while make weird comments about how, like, if I wanted to get into really the hardest kind of sound design there is, that I should look into hardstyle kicks. And every time they said this, I got confused. Just be like, they don't sound that hard. And I would just kind of leave them alone, just not really worry about it. But like, it came at not like a lot, but like enough of a frequency that I was just like, okay, all right. I don't think they're actually this hard, but go ahead and show me what you think like a good example of hardstyle was. And more than one person they gave me this sort of stuff. But the thing is, though, is that like I'd done my own research into hardstyle and like listened to the tracks, but I just assumed that I was missing something. I wasn't listening to the real hardstyle to see where the real difficulty was. And the other part is that like I also thought that these people like perhaps did not know about other groups like Cohen Sound or Skrillex or Noisia, and like just for some reason didn't think that there was more difficult sound design. And no, they knew about them. They were there, but they would contend that hardstyle kicks were the hardest thing there is. Now, long story short, it's not as hard as I think they think it is, but it's a little bit harder than I necessarily thought it would be. I made kind of a tirade about it, and eventually I decided to put my own money where my mouth was and do this track from scratch to essentially prove that it wasn't that hard. But and along the way, I learned a couple of things about the genre, and I have a newfound respect for those who produce it. However, it's still really not that hard. It's tedious as fuck, but it's not hard. It's really kind of all very known quantity stuff at this point. Which I suppose could still be said about, Skrillex and Noisia sound design, that kind of thing. But it's really, it's all very interesting in the sense that like the quality of a hardstyle kick is measured in the hours spent producing it. The result almost doesn't matter. It's like how much time was spent producing it. And some of the techniques that I would see people use to produce these things definitely betrayed, oh yeah, I spent a lot of time producing it. So anyway, this track was me giving my shot at it. In typical me fashion, I decided to make the kick not out of the usual method of doing it by doing a whole lot of resampling, but instead to try doing it live with Harmer resampling, sort of. I put a 909 inside Harmer, and I would, that's all reverbed out. There it is. So I have, Harmers and stuff like that. We'll go over this in the sound design portion, but like this is what the kick is made of, and it goes a lot of strange places. And the painful part is that like, given enough time away from having made this track, I can see that this kick isn't really all that great, but it's way better than some of my earlier attempts, and like I feel like I have enough understanding of it now that I don't really need to care anymore. The whole reason why I did this in the first place is because I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing something crucial, that like there was something somewhere that like was really, really hard that I wanted to figure out. Because I like doing stuff the hard way. I like doing stuff from scratch, and I like knowing how to do everything. So like I just wanted to make sure that I understood that there wasn't really anything beyond like the kind of finesse and experience you get from doing this kind of stuff for years as the thing you're going to do. So I'm not really worried about it anymore. But I did actually make a better one that I was going to use in the track from scratch, but then what I used to make it better didn't save. And I tried to use direct wave and like do actual resampling, because like a lot of the hardstyle kicks that get used it really is a lot of resampling, time stretching, layering, and that kind of thing, and all sorts of other just independent parts. And I'm still doing that, like in my own particular fashion, but like it's just that this actually isn't the best that I like doing, but it still worked out, just fine. And then came the part where I actually had to write a hardstyle track. And that got interesting because I couldn't find a lot of like best practices in my hardstyle research. Like the hardstyle community is like the most antagonistic community I've ever witnessed in the musical genre. They just hate everything that isn't precisely the thing they want, and everybody wants something different. A thing I like to say about this whole situation is that if I were to ask 10 hardstyle fans if they liked that, if they thought this was a good hardstyle track, all of them would say no. However, if I were to then ask those same 10 people to give me an example of what a good hardstyle track is, like if I were to look at one of their answers, the other 9 would think that that one guy's answer was just as wrong as my track. So like I couldn't get a consensus on anything, and my own research really didn't help because I could find an example of anything I wanted at any quality level anywhere, and it was just really hard to kind of do. But I did eventually pick a couple hardstyle tracks to use as a template for how this was going to go. In particular, Brendan Hart. You know, old noise controllers and lots of groups with Z in their name, and like also like Frontliner and Audio Freak and that kind of thing. But I use those as like a template to arrange the track to kind of meet those sorts of standards. And like the way that this worked out was that there was like your standard DJ intro, and then a kind of like faux. Okay, actually, here's a full thing, weird thing. I guess this is actually from the kind of housey or trancey things, but they don't refer to these. They don't refer to stuff as drops. They refer to stuff as climaxes, and they have such terms as anti-climax or fake climax, that kind of thing. And essentially, where you like in an intro, you don't use you're basically not you're not putting forward the full progression. So here. We're starting to introduce like this progression, but like we're not actually progressing. So like the point being that like we get used to how this sounds, we get used to this key or whatever, and then when this does show up and it starts to move around, it's that much more interesting. That's kind of like that's the value of that. And like this is also the track that it's just lots of effects and other ideas. Like there's stuff like this and like this and like this stuff. I learned a bit about particular kinds of like bandpass processing from stuff like this, because what you do with these sort of things is that like you have your sound and then you modulate it with like a really thin bandpass, and then you distort that and you get that like radio sounding breakage, and that's like all over the place in hardstyle. And so like once I figured that one out, I was able to kind of make enough of a mess to make that work out. And the vocals, oh boy, the vocals. There's lots of just noise and like typical things, but then we also have the glorious and amazing printer lead. I fucking love this thing. Okay, so I call it printer style, and if you've watched the other making ofs, you've seen this already in other tracks. But this is the track that actually made this. This is where this is from, and this was a total accident. I was making a lead, or I think I was trying to, and I made whatever I made happen. But I noticed if I played it high enough, because like playing it down here, it's got kind of a fun, scratchy, kind of trappy lead almost, very festival trap. And like if I just keep going, I realized that it sounds exactly like a printer, like a freaking like receipt printer instead of an ATM or something. Or it kind of sounds like one of those motors that's inside a scanner whenever it moves around stuff. It's like, and I was just taken aback by how on point that was. So I just had to keep that for the actual lead. So this is a more sort of hardish core, not literally hardcore, because hardcore is a thing, and that's is an important distinction from hardstyle as a thing. But essentially, this is like the more headbanging kind of sound designing moment, and then it breaks into sort of the euphoric melodic moment. So these are all recordings of sounds from East-West stuff, like various strings added together, and then there's a couple of brass parts that happen too. So like here's the like a cello, contrabass, violin 1, violin 2, violin 3. Oh, well, this must have been a viola. then trombone, French horn, and trumpet. Good stuff. I want to make sure I bring these down. And then on top of this is this whole speech, which is just the best.
The spectrum of our souls must change, so that we may all record a modulator.
So I'm making fun of my track recording a modulator, and I recorded this out. I knew that I was essentially like, because again, my research into hardstyle, a lot of the bigger epic ones and the anthems, that kind of stuff, have like this kind of like prophetic voice coming in, and like very deep and epic sounding voice that's just like narrating stuff and talking about destiny and that kind of thing. So like I decided, oh, I'll just do that. And the way that this is working is I recorded myself doing that, and then I did a series of processes to it. I guess I'll talk about this in the sound design portion, but I don't actually have the whole process here anymore. But you can watch me do that, of course, in the making the track from scratch recordings for this video, for this whole track. It was a lot of fun because I basically discovered that with the right tweaking, I can make my voice sound like Optimus Prime, and that's really where a lot of this came from.
We must all modulate our lives.
Really didn't plan for that to happen, but like it just worked out that way.
This is my modulator.
And layered against the voice, the main voice itself, which is just, you know, one thing.
This is my modulator.
Lots of reverb stuff on there. But then there's this guy. This is a blurred version of that, and where you put that in Edison and you turn on the blur mode, you can essentially create different reverb before and after a particular moment. And that's what that was. I'm sort of fading it in there to create like the kind of Protossy vibe.
We must all modulate our lives.
Yeah. And of course there is you know, a pluck synthy moments. This is some harmers, and then this is also some harmers. Like they open up into different things, and then there's 2 stacks of leads, I think, on this. So like there's the kick, and then there's that, and then there's this guy. And this is the serum. And like this mattered, using serum for this purpose actually mattered quite a bit, because I was using the 16 voice unison, which these kinds of sounds are very, very dense unison kind of things. I probably could have done this just fine with Harmor or Citrus, but it's a lot easier when I could just slam 16 voices together, or like open up Massive and slam 64 voices together and just like make a really killer, like detuned as hell lead. And like on all the hits, there's also like these guys and like crashes. I'm using like the 909 stuff because apparently hardstyle is all about the 909 and the noise. And printer style comes back in near the end as like a lead up into the next part. And like this part was fun because I used the lead, like a low version of the lead, to go beneath the printer style thing, and then I'll kind of transitioned into the printer style doing the melodic part, because this whole time here it wasn't. I did actually make a couple of like melodic changes that I wouldn't normally do for things, like the particular melody. Like that's not super. Like just the chords I chose, that kind of thing, were very influenced by sort of the stuff that I would see on different like hardstyle tracks. It's a little bit. It's not that far different from what I normally do, but it's a bit different enough for it to be its own thing and fit the genre a little bit better. And like so, like the first time through is, I think I'm doing the 3s here. Yeah. So it's doing the da 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 da. I'm like, that's not actually in this lead here. That's in this guy here. This is actually the off time. And like they're layering together because they're not the same sound. If I actually did put that many notes of the one sound here, it wouldn't have worked out as well. So like it's a bit of a mixing consideration to have this be a lower thing. And this actually exemplifies a point that I bring up a lot when I'm talking like to students or like a stream or whatever, is that mixing and mastering is all well and good, but arrangement needs to be a part of that too. Arrangement can inform a lot about what you're going to do with a mix. It can also solve a lot of problems that you couldn't just solve with just mixing. Like when you can EQ and level stuff to your heart's content, but if you write stuff to have different material at different times in such a way that they don't conflict anymore as an arrangement consideration, then you are able to deal with things a bit easier in the mixing stage. And this is one of those. The idea that like instead of having the same sound be in like the same sound, I had that other part being a different thing so that it's still there. You can still feel it, but it's not interrupting it or being in the way. But what I was going to show off was that this is in threes, and then the second part is just the same thing again, but now it's straight. So being da 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 da, it's da 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 da, and that was enough for me to be like, oh, it's just that again, because it's not so much that like the hardstyle has less variation. It's just that they pride more of their big wall of sound than they do like interesting sound design. In fact, the songs that seem to be more universally hated by people who are like true hardstylers tend to be ones that have more interesting sound design. I'm not totally sure why, but it seems to be the case. And like I've threw around the vocals and process versions of it all over the place. This was kind of an accident because I put this one in here on purpose. And like, I put this one in here, but I forgot to cut off this area. And so when I would listen to it in preview, it would still be there. So I was kind of like, oh, well, that sounds okay, honestly. An event that you could watch for yourself, and by watching the track from scratch, that is this song, which is track from scratch 11, the hardstyle track from scratch. It took a very long time to get to this position, and it was a lot of like I spent many videos on the kick, because that's obviously the whole point, is that the kick takes a lot of time. It's really not a difficult thing. All the concepts are there, all the concepts are extremely well documented and present for everyone to see. It just takes kind of a long time if you're gonna try and get there the way that they do it. Which, I mean, if you want, that's sort of that's one of the things I noticed about hardstyle in general, is that it's not about individualism. It seems to be they want you to try as hard as you can to be the style, and any sort of delineation from there is seen as a problem. And of course, other people like it just fine. Like there's plenty of people who are like, oh, we like hardstyle, but I like this track. And honestly, that sentiment is probably a damning enough evidence that I didn't do a good job making a hardstyle track. Anyway, that's a reasonable amount for this. There's actually not that much in this song, and like for how long it took me to make it, it seems like that would be more. But like some of the sound design is a little bit more interesting, and some of the effects that I do on it are neat. But like instrument wise, there's almost nothing in this song, which is pretty typical. Anyway, if you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And as usual, have a nice day.